If everybody can find a seat, we'll begin our meeting. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Dugas. I'm the Chief of Preliminary Design for the DOT, which means that I work on the early stages of highway design projects throughout the state and focusing on the early stages of the project development. And mostly, the biggest part of that is dealing with the public and getting feedback on the different designs that we're considering. Before I begin, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Trent Zanes. Trent Zanes is a design engineer in highway design, and he's put engineering time into both of these options that I'll discuss tonight. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to update you on the work that we've done studying safety improvements at the intersection of Route 28 and 171. A review of what's been done. Some changes have been made out there over the last year, what is still to come, and what could be coming in the future behind that. Trent has begun circulating an attendance sheet. We'd like to have a record of who's here with us tonight. And I'll begin with a brief history of the project. I was here to talk about this project exactly 1 year ago this week. At the time, the design that we were moving ahead with was what I would call an interim improvement. We had considered both roundabout and signal alternatives. At the time, our preferred treatment was to construct a southbound right turn lane from 28 turning right onto 171. And that was meant as an interim treatment to address the problem that we had heard regarding the vehicles that come down 28 southbound with the directional signals on because they didn't turn off back at Route 16. And we felt that that treatment would have addressed that issue and thereby making the intersection safer. I think it's safe to say that our proposal for the interim improvement left the town officials dissatisfied. They felt that more was really needed at that intersection. And you're probably aware when we had the fatal crash here back in November, that led the town selectmen to approach Senator Bradley. And Senator Bradley got the town and the DOT back together to take a step back and look comprehensively at the range of alternatives to come up with a plan, a program that we're all confident in that will address the safety issues at this intersection. And so we have done that, and I'm reporting back on the status of that work. As a result of the meeting between the town and Senator Bradley, which is back in December, we met in January at the intersection with town officials, with the state police, and discussed the possible range of alternatives that include short-term alternatives, medium-term, and longer-term that we show on the boards here. And so I'll review what's been done regarding that list of possible alternatives and where those stand today. There was a short list, a modestly long list of short-term improvements. Some of these are very simple. That's why they were short-term. They could be attacked immediately. The first had to do with tree clearing. Beginning last fall, the district forces, just joining us in the back of the room is Al Hanscom. Al is the district engineer for this part of the state, who oversees the maintenance of all the highways, all the state highways in this area. Alan's forces did some tree clearing last fall, and they did additional this summer to open up the sight lines looking to the right from Courthouse Square back towards Route 16. That work has been done. A second improvement that was made this spring was, if you recall, there was a stop sign that had once been in the traffic island on Courthouse Square heading towards Route 28, so 171 heading westbound. There's a stop sign on the right-hand side. There used to be a stop sign in the traffic island on the left-hand side of traffic. That had been knocked down years ago, never replaced. That stop sign has been replaced. So now both approaches to 171 have stop signs on both the right and the left-hand sides of traffic. In addition, on the posts for those stop signs, we added what are known as object markers. So the diamond-shaped red reflective panels meant to make the stop signs more visible to the approaching traffic. Another short-term effort that was done, our Bureau of Traffic reviewed the signs, the highway signs throughout the intersection area to ensure that they're all up to date. And they did confirm that the sign messages, the sign materials, so the reflectivity of the signs, is appropriate, and the placement of the signs is also appropriate. There's no need to change the signs that are out there. One concern that the fire chief had regarding the signs was that one of the guide signs on 28 northbound can shield vehicles when you're looking left for 171. We found that is probably true. However, we found that the sign is in the correct location as far as the relationship between the sign and the intersection. And truly, wherever that sign ends up, it's going to be blocking a vehicle at some point on the vehicle's approach to the intersection. And so we felt there was no change needed to that guide sign. And the fifth and final element of the possible short-term improvements has not been done yet, but that's one thing I want to open to the floor, and we can discuss it at the end of my presentation. And that is the possibility of adding temporary rumble strips across 171 westbound approaching the stop sign to alert westbound traffic of the presence of that stop condition at Route 28. That was mentioned as a potential by, I think, Brad Harriman might have offered that idea. That's certainly something we could do. I would caution you that rumble strips, transverse rumble strips that every vehicle will strike, are noisy. They can become a nuisance, but they can also be effective. And so I'll open that up. You can think about that as I finish my presentation, and we can talk about it after, see if you think that's something that would be a good idea to try. This would be a temporary installation, so it's essentially strips that get adhere to the road surface, and they'd be removed before snow season comes because they wouldn't survive the snow plows. So that's something you can think about, see if that's something you think would be a reasonable treatment to try. There were two elements identified as possible medium-term improvements. One was potentially looking at, is there any justification for reducing the speed limit between the intersection and Route 16? The feeling was if we can get traffic to slow down, that would be a benefit to safety at the intersection. So we conducted a speed study late spring. We confirmed what we felt beforehand going in, that the speeds are above the posted speed today. The average speeds are above 55. So we really don't have a good case for lowering the speed limit, because desirably we want to have a speed limit that is reflecting the behavior of the average driver. If we simply lower the speed limit sign, we'll do little or nothing to reducing the speeds. We simply make a lot more violators. And that doesn't make any kind of a change to the speeds unless it's accompanied by really heavy enforcement. And that really isn't something that we can commit to. The DOT has no part in that. I know that that's beyond the ability of the town to do for an extended period. So for the moment, for the time being, we do not propose to change speed limits coming into the intersection from Route 16. And a second potential medium-term improvement is in the works and is intended to be installed this year still, is the installation of a warning sign on the southbound approach of the intersection. So on Route 28, just to the north, near the top of the crest as you approach the intersection. And that would probably be a yellow sign with black text that says entering traffic, and it would also have flashing yellow beacons on it. So that's something that the town, the state police, the DOT felt that could be a beneficial treatment. Treatments like that, they usually have a short lifespan of when they're beneficial, because when traffic sees the same sign every day, they get used to it, they get accustomed to it, and they probably become blind to it after a while. But we agree that there is some benefit to that sign, so we are moving ahead with installing that warning sign. And then finally, we've talked about this in prior meetings, but we had two basic concepts for potential long-term improvements, that being either installing a traffic signal or rebuilding the intersection as a roundabout, as shown here on the left. And I'll mention first of all, before I talk about the designs, both of these designs, the yellow and the green and all the colored areas, are drawn on top of an aerial photograph from 2015. And north on these is to the right, so Route 28 goes from north to south through the intersection. 171 Courthouse Square goes to the east towards Route 16, and then 171 west towards the county facilities. So the two alternatives that we reviewed, we put more engineering, we had put some engineering into both of these options at earlier meetings. We put more of an effort into the design details of both of these in response to the meeting with the town and the state police. Looking first at the traffic signal alternative, We found that in signalizing the intersection, we would need to do some modest improvements to the intersection. First of all, to properly align the two side roads. If you notice that as you drive to the intersection today at the stop signs, the side roads aren't quite perfectly aligned with each other. It becomes more of an issue when we have a traffic signal that people are driving through. And secondly, because of the path of truck turns at the signal, we would propose to take out the traffic islands that exist there today. I know our district engineer would be happy to have fewer islands to snowplow around, so we probably would favorably upon that change. The estimated cost of the traffic signal alternative that we've shown here would be about $500,000. Because of the engineering time that we have to put into this, we could probably deliver this by 2019, so not next year, not next construction season, but the year after that, possibly late in 2018. I would reiterate, though, that this design doesn't really overcome the concerns that we talked about at prior meetings. So first of all, in choosing a traffic signal as an intersection control alternative, we look to see certain levels of traffic at an intersection. We don't want to be installing a traffic signal if the traffic volumes are too low. We found that at this location, the traffic volumes really aren't quite high enough to justify a traffic signal as the best form of traffic control. Another concern that we have with traffic signals is that while we understand that it will help the side road traffic make their way across 28 or turn into 28, it will also lead to rear-end collisions that we don't have today on Route 28. We know that for a fact. That's what traffic signals do. Traffic will be stopping on 28 where it doesn't have to stop today, so that's a reality. Another real drawback with signals, and this really relates to the roundabout design, is that with a traffic signal, when that light on 28 is green, the signal offers no speed control at all. Traffic can still travel through at full speed through that signal. And that's been one of the key challenges that we've been trying to address with this project from day one. And so with a signal, you're only one red light runner away from the same types of crashes that we've seen over the years at this intersection. So the signal really doesn't fully address the problems that we're seeing here. So that leads me to the final, the second of the two potential long-term improvement alternatives, and that's the roundabout. So this would entail fully reconstructing the intersection, constructing what we call a modern roundabout, very similar to other roundabouts you might see throughout the state. When we're dealing with the types of traffic we have to accommodate, so big tractor trailers, we generally find that the roundabout needs to be in the vicinity of about 135 feet across. That's generally what you see on other roundabouts on state highways. And that size really is a balance that we try to seek between making it big enough to fit those tractor trailers, yet keeping it small enough to keep the speeds down. Because the small size and the lower speeds that result from that are the root of how roundabouts can be such a big safety benefit to traffic. I'll talk about some of the basic components of a roundabout. So each leg of the roundabout, either Route 28 or Route 171, would have one entry leg, one exit leg. I should have mentioned that the yellow on this drawing, the yellow on that drawing, shows the lanes where the traffic would travel through the intersection. The brown alongside the road shows paved shoulders. The light blue shading on the roundabout design shows where we'd have traffic islands. In the case of a roundabout, those are known as splitter islands, and the splitter islands divide the traffic that's approaching the roundabout from the traffic departing the roundabout. So again, 135-foot diameter, roughly, for the roundabout itself, where the motor vehicles will travel. Inside that, the gray area is what's known as a truck apron. That's an extra area of concrete surface that's meant to give the back ends of big tractor trailers extra width as they make their way through the intersection, especially when they're making a left turn, the back end off tracks. And that gray area concrete is meant to receive the back wheels of the tractor trailers. So the roundabouts that we design certainly are designed with tractor trailers in mind. And because they fit tractor trailers, they will fit fire trucks, they will fit school buses, no problem at all. And then finally, in the infield of the roundabout, the green area shows an area that could be landscaped, and very often we offer that to the towns to maintain that. They can plant flowers, shrubs. Usually want to keep things low so they're not a site obstruction, but that's available for beautifying the intersection. Now, when we talked about the roundabout as a potential long-term improvement last year, the main concern that we had with this alternative was because for traffic traveling southbound from Route 16, the intersection is screened from their view by the high point along Route 28. So what we've done a couple things with this design to try to address that concern. First of all, the splitter island on the northerly leg of Route 28 has been extended up and over the crest. And so at a minimum, we'd have the traffic island in the middle of the road. We'd have paint stripes that will divert traffic to the side of the island. We'd have a keep right sign at the end of the island. We'd have lighting there to illuminate the end of the curbing. So that'll make the approach to the roundabout more visible. We'd also plan to mound the central island of the roundabout to make that a little bit more visible. Very often we make that flat, but if you elevate that a little bit, that'll make that more visible to approaching traffic as well. Before the meeting, I heard Trent talk about the approach work on the south end of the roundabout. This is shown very long as well, pretty much reflecting what's shown on the north end. In all likelihood, this would be shortened up considerably because the sight lines coming in from Wolfboro are very good. You don't need to have that long traffic island to alert you to the intersection. So with the two alternatives, I should have mentioned that with this traffic signal alternative, all of this work could be accomplished within the highway right-of-way, so there's no impact at all to private property. However, when we talk about the roundabout alternative, because it's a bigger footprint at the intersection, this would have impacts on the Pappas property, the Saco property, and the Huggins Hospital property. The impacts are generally limited to earthwork, shaping of the roadside beside the roundabout. We'd have to rebuild a couple of the driveways. However, because of those property impacts, the process that we need to follow would delay us in implementing a solution like this until probably 2020, because the process we need to follow to go through a public hearing and then follow the steps we need to acquire the property rights for those small areas on private property. So I said the traffic signal alternative would be about $500,000 to construct. This one, the roundabout alternative, would be between $1.2 million and $1.5 million. So it's quite a bit more money. It's quite a bit greater safety benefit as well. So that wraps up everything that I had to talk about. Again, I'd like to get your feedback, certainly on these two options, also on the short, medium options. If you have any thoughts on the temporary rumble strips, if you think that's a worthwhile treatment to try, I'm welcome to hear any of the input that you have. So I'll open it up to you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious as to what kind of extra lighting you might propose for either one of these, because I know that the state has been taking away lighting in various places. Will there be a need for more lighting?
Yeah, I don't recall, is there any kind of a light out there today?
Ask Melissa.
No, not on.
Just the blinking light.
Right. There's no illumination, there's no light.
There's one there, but it's not on.
Right. Generally, when we signalize an intersection, generally do have at least one light at the intersection. In the case of a roundabout, because we have only traffic islands, our practice is to illuminate the islands so that it'll become a hazard to traffic. And so the roundabout option would have more lights than the signal option. Yes, sir.
Have you talked to the hospital people at all about the roundabout option?
We haven't talked to any of these about it specifically about this option yet.
Specific follow-up about that. I'm one of the hospital trustees, and we are talking at the hospital about possibly moving the Ossipee office to a piece of property the hospital already owns on Route 16. So there might be some way of working with them about that, both to facilitate the time frame. You also could possibly move that intersection northward to lessen the impact on the other two property owners.
So take this to slide in this direction?
No, northward.
Oh, so westward, okay.
Yeah,
Got you.
the
That way.
DOT property and that property, because if the hospital's not going to have an office there, they probably won't care as much what you do.
Right. I think in the end, we'll have to provide a safe access into that site, regardless of whether the hospital is there or somebody else buys it from you.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that is an option,
It would be less traffic.
unless it becomes a Dunkin' Donuts. Just saying. Yes, ma'am.
What about changes to drainage pattern and things like that? Do you look at that when you're designing something
Yeah,
like
we
this?
do. We haven't looked at that yet. We know that the signal option is very similar to our prior interim option, the right turn lane. There's very little effect. We would have just maintained existing flow patterns. The same is generally true, I expect, with this design. And again, with the roundabout probably being shortened here, there wouldn't be any effect at all on the stream channel. But we have very strict regulations we have to follow for impacts on overland flow. Yes, sir.
Have you, excuse me, have you done much of a study of what different types of accidents we have here? What are most prevalent? Is it mostly cars that are traveling on Route 28? Is it traffic entering the intersection from 171? Do we
Yeah.
know what the big problem is?
My recollection is it's generally failure to yield. So people exiting 171 when there isn't a big enough gap for them. That isn't all the crashes, but that's many of them. Yes, sir.
How many accidents are contributed by people that are westbound on 28 with their right turn signal still going when they approach that intersection?
That's hard to say, because that's one piece of information that you never get in the crash report. Did the person have the blinker on that they were trying to go straight?
The sign that warns them isn't big enough. I just talked to somebody here tonight that's lived here a long time and never saw that sign.
I heard that too. I understand that's a sound placed by the town.
My recommendation on that, or suggestion, would be to redesign the southbound turnoff from 16 so that it's sharper, so that as you straighten out onto 28, it cancels your turn signal.
I'm happy to report that that's coming.
Good.
That will be done as part of a bigger project from the 2816 intersection up past Green Mountain Furniture, that whole strip there.
And my preference is the stop sign, not lights. I don't like circles.
Yes, sir.
So I might have missed the traffic count part of the presentation, but if you look at 2000 to 2010, 2010 to 2017, what is the driving force as far as the number increase, as far as traveling along that road, 28? And is it because there's been a buildup of retail off of Route 16 at the other end? And what do you predict is the future demographics with regards to population increase and traffic flow onto that road? So can you be predictive about that? And my last question would be, will the roundabout or the signal alternative, which one will be the better alternative going into the future based off of that demographic data?
We don't generally have demographic data for our projects. We do projections of future traffic based on information from our permanent traffic counters. I have that in the car. I don't have it with me here, so if you want to wait afterwards, I can get that information for you.
Well, it's not necessarily for me, but it's for the town officials and, for the public. So that would be important, information for them to make decision-making, with what alternative that they choose, in the future. Because my thoughts is that, New Hampshire's growing, certain parts of it growing more, and I'd be curious to know how Southern Carroll County fits into that picture.
Right, then what we've seen in most of the state is over the last decade or so, traffic declined and has been very slowly recovering from that decline. But there's been very little growth, per se, on many of the project locations that we see. So very often when there's no growth shown in our permanent counter data, we apply, just for conservative reasons, 1% growth per year to our projections.
So just to build upon that, why am I, as a kid who grew up in Carroll County, why am I seeing more traffic than I've ever seen before? Because our travel and tourism count revenue numbers are up 7% from a year ago, and it's up over 5% this year. They got to be going somewhere, with the ATV explosion up north, with the retail explosion in North Conway, with new retail here in West Ossipee. So there has to be an increase in traffic. It's got to be coming from somewhere, and I think it's coming from outside the state.
That could be, yeah. I will provide, in the notes that I write for this meeting, I will provide those numbers. I did have them at prior meetings, I did bring them for today. But again, we don't do any detailed demographic projections on our projects, we're not able to do that. But we do project some level of growth over the 20-year design life of our projects. Yes, ma'am.
I do have a comment related to what he was alluding to. The old drive-in property has been sold to somebody that is in the process of building storage units.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the capacity is going to be, but I mean, that will be having an impact on Route 28 wherever the renters come from to access those.
Yeah, generally, a storage unit like that is on the very low end of types of developments for traffic generation.
But the drive-in, that had 0.
True.
And now you're opening it up
And our
to,
presumption
well,
is,
theoretically had 0.
right, and our presumption is that by assuming at least a 1% growth per year, it captures it, accounts for small developments like that. Actually, gentleman in the back had another question that I didn't answer. You had asked about the safety performance or the long-term life, I guess, of one of these options versus the other. The roundabout would have the best traffic operation in all times of the day. And one condition that it avoids that you would see at a signal is that when you approach a signal at night, very often you'll stop at a red light when there's nobody around you. That will never happen at a roundabout. Either one of these would satisfy the traffic demand for many years to come. The roundabout would be a little bit more efficient traffic operations.
So what you're saying is it's going to accommodate increased traffic count more so at the roundabout than coming to a signal light?
Yeah, in this case, because the traffic lines aren't very large, either of these have many decades of life in them. So it might not be the deciding factor at this point whether we choose one or the other. It's something to be aware of. Yes, sir.
I was just going to comment on things that citizens can do that can sometimes cause problems. The building that is the hospital, doctor's office building here, has recently installed a couple of very bright lights on the front of their building. And they're not pointed down at the parking lot, they're pointed up in the air. And those are right in the face of anybody that's coming up Route 171 from Courthouse Square. You've got this blinding light in your face, which just makes it a little more difficult to see up and down the road. And I don't know what DOT could do about people doing something like that. There's no law against putting up an outside light in your house. But to me, that's an example.
There is actually a statute that prohibits lights glaring at drivers' eyes.
You don't see it much this time of year because it's dark.
Yeah,
By
there-
10 o'clock at night.
There is a statute about
It's a
that.
blinding
Well,
light.
related to that, we've heard reports in the past, certain times of the year, political signs or yard sale signs can block sight lines as well. Those could be issues at times.
I might be guilty of that myself.
Again, on the traffic light, you could have the setup like they have on 16 and 28, where the Route 28 traffic would have the preference, and that light would stay green until somebody on 171 came up and tripped the signal.
That's exactly how it works.
Yeah, okay, well, it wasn't mentioned.
That's how all of our
That won't tie
signals,
up traffic.
that's how all of our signals work these days.
Okay,
Because
good.
you're very observant.
Mike, great presentation. The intersection of 171 westbound, we have a very active nursing home population and workers, jail, sheriff's office, courthouse. Would that 171 be expanded to accommodate that type of traffic?
What we found was that with either one of these lines, you really only need a single lane to have plenty of capacity for the volumes that we see out there. Very short delays in both conditions. Yes, sir.
I would speak for the roundabout simply because the traffic light, you're going to have people speeding or trying to beat the light as they're coming from Route 16 towards Wolfboro. And it's going to be the same problem that if you're going west on 171, that you're still down in the dip there, and your sight line, you know, it may go green and you think it's safe to go, and somebody comes bombing along and they're doing 55, 60 and want to try and beat the light.
Right.
And
Well, they're not
you're going to have
taking
the,
action.
right, and you're going to have the same kind of clobbering you've got now. The light, I don't think, really does deal with that. And most of the accidents seem to end up with the cars in the bank of the Huggins Hospital lot. I don't know, probably some of the others could speak to that, but it seems like there are always places you can see where cars have gone into that embankment.
Right. Yeah. Heard that.
It's probably somebody westbound on 28 still has their right turn signal going.
No,
And the northbound person is
Well,
coming off
it isn't
171.
turn
Oh,
signal.
he's gonna turn, so.
because I can tell you my wife had that exact same accident. If you look right first, you look left second, and you start to go, pillars on modern cars also perfectly block at exactly that spot, so you don't see that person traveling on 28. And even though you know it's a bad place and you're careful, you still get blinded. And that's why I think the roundabout really does deal with that issue of safety, as you said, whereas the light, you're still going to have people going through or running the light.
Right. Yeah, one comment I make about roundabouts that we generally mention when we present these for the first time in the community is that generally we find, not only in New Hampshire but throughout the country, replacing a signal or a stop sign with a roundabout usually reduces all crashes by about 30%, reduces injury crashes by 70%, and reduces fatal and serious injuries by 90% or more. So as I said, it is the safest option for intersection traffic control. Yes, sir.
Michael, in Pelham, New Hampshire, within the last few years, they put 2 roundabouts, probably a couple thousand feet apart from one another. And when they were installing those, the people were up in arms, said, this is not gonna work, this is stupid. Whoever designed this, did you work on that? But I have to say, after it was done and people got the use of going around it, I actually said to my wife, I gotta eat my words. I said, this is really nice.
It's fabulous. Did a great job.
Where was it?
Where was it? Pelham, New
Major sweat,
Hampshire.
didn't we?
Yes, David.
Two things, please. When you made your traffic survey, it was during the winter time, okay? And it was not on a weekend, it was during the weekday.
I don't know
So-
when we counted that. I don't know when we did our traffic counts.
The impact on the weekends that we have here, and it is throughout the year because of tourists. Okay, that was my thing. Are you getting an accurate picture of the traffic? The second thing is the gray circle within the turning center. I'm concerned with the large fire engines going around that circle and being able to negotiate. And Ossipee Corner doesn't have a hook and ladder, but other departments in town do, which are much longer. And that circle will really accommodate the emergency vehicles. And we also have an issue of that is the direct access for ambulances going into Wolfboro. And you have a major usage from the nursing home. So the emergency services in that area are quite high in numbers.
Right. There are a couple of questions there. I'll touch on the first one first. You asked some questions about the traffic counting that was done. I don't recall what time of year it was counted, but what we do, we have locations throughout the state where we have continuous counts going on every day, 24/7. So that allows us to count any time during the year and adjust those counts to reflect a more average condition. So counting in the winter or counting in the summer when it's too high, it doesn't really cause a problem. We can adjust either one up or down to reflect what will be an average condition. But you're probably right that I don't think we ever counted weekends. That's something we could look at.
And making a left-hand turn on Friday or Sunday night is wonderful.
Wonderful in the best possible way. And then about your concern with fire trucks, and I think maybe Pelham is a good example. Generally, we find that there's a big concern in the community for the ability of fire trucks to get through the roundabout. However, we find that fire trucks really aren't as big as people think they are, because again, we're designing this for tractor trailers. So fire trucks, school buses, they generally have no problem. And very often, they're able to drive through this without even touching that truck apron in the middle. They can stay within the paved area meant for cars and pickups and small trucks. So usually that isn't a problem. As far as the extra time, sometimes communities are afraid that this will cause extra time for response or for delivering patients. On the flip side, there should be a lot fewer crashes, so there's less need to respond to the intersection itself. So there is a positive to that as well. Yes, sir.
I'm Rick Morgan, I'm Chairman of the Board of Selectmen. First of all, thank you for the department coming back with some other alternatives. I certainly want to thank Joe Kenny, Lino Avellini, Ed Comeau, and our others who helped lobby to revisit this. When the previous plan was submitted, there were a lot of people who were quite skeptical that it would fix the problem. And obviously since then there have been additional fatalities, additional accidents, and with their help, I'm glad to see that you're looking for a more permanent solution. This gentleman brought up the blinker sign, and it's a valid point. I actually retired as chief of police here, and for more than 17 years, every other year, when the DOT would come here, I would raise that issue and ask for a sign. After 12 or 14 years, I was told that the reason that there wasn't a sign is because it's not an approved sign.
Oh, the sign, turn off your blinker.
Turn off your
Yes,
blinker,
right.
check your blinker. It's not an approved sign, which actually makes my head hurt, but there's got to be a process for approving a sign. So the one little sign that's down there is actually on town property that we erected because the state wouldn't do so. What I'm asking is, knowing that either one of these are going to be a while, I agree with the rumble strips, even if on a temporary basis as another means. I know the sign doing it on the crest is a good thing, but will the state at least allow a decent sized sign that says check your blinker to be put on Route 28? The town of Ossipee will pay for it if you just won't take it down when we put it up.
I will ask the question again. I've got the same answer that you have done.
It just seems to me to be foolish.
Right.
I mean,
We do have very strict federal guidelines that we are held to.
I get that,
So-
and I'm not asking you to
But
buy it,
I
and
will
I'm
ask
not
the
asking
question.
you to put it up. We will do so.
Suppose you want a flashing light on it.
Maybe pink so it's visible.
We'll put it up.
Just hire somebody to stand there.
Just don't know.
Yes, ma'am.
Melissa Siemens, Carroll County Independent. I have been reporting news for about 20 years in the area. So I've reported on a lot of different possible road improvements, including a long time ago, we talked about a roundabout in West Ossipee that never quite materialized.
I designed that one.
I'm sorry. It didn't go over so well.
Right. They never got off the ground.
But my point is that we see these projects and then they're put into the 10-year plan. And then the 10 years becomes 15 and 20. And is the scheduling of the 10-year plan any different than it used to be? Are we actually meeting the projects? Is there funding? We have 3 representatives and an executive counselor here. Is there funding to fund the 10-year plan?
Yeah, we have the benefit on this project of using a funding stream that's separate from the 10-year plan, you could say.
Okay.
This doesn't need to get in line behind other regional priorities because this is using what's known as Highway Safety Improvement Program funds. So it's a subset of the money that we get from the Federal Highway Administration, and it's meant to be applied at locations with histories of crashes. And so we don't need to wait in line for 10 years or 15 years behind other projects. So we do have funding available for this project as soon as we can agree on which direction we're heading in.
That's encouraging.
Yes, Brad?
Again, thank you for coming and doing the presentation here. I'm Brad Harriman, the Public Works Director here in town, and I just wanted to say that, I'm in favor of the roundabout solution as the more permanent solution here for a couple of reasons. You kind of weighed into on them in the beginning in your presentation. If you had a light there, I'd be concerned about the queuing of the cars heading south on 28. If the light is sitting there red for a few cars to pass from east to west on 171 there. And then, because you figure about 5 cars queued up there is going to shorten up your reaction zone by over 100 feet there. And people do come over that knoll that, as everybody knows, at more than the 40 miles an hour, they're 55 to 60. And I think you'll see a huge number of increased rear-end collisions there, as you pointed out earlier and stuff. But just want to bring out the point that the queuing of those cars up there too will be shortening down the reaction time, those cars coming over the knoll there also. So that was kind of my comment I wanted to make on, my thought process to which one I support. So.
Brad was saying that as people are stopped here at the red light, people coming over the crest may be surprised by having cars stop in front of them. They'll have a short reaction time to brake before reaching the back of the queue. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to voice, I am not too thrilled about rumble strips. I feel badly for those living on Route 28 because I live in pretty close to the old historic courthouse, and they're very noisy from even that distance. I can't imagine trying to sleep with...
Oh, you're talking about center line rumble strips.
Right, yeah.
These are transverse, so just go across the lane, so every vehicle will strike that rumble strip.
Yeah.
It's different. So this is like what we have in Effingham Falls. If you've been to 153 in Effingham Falls,
Yeah, they wore off.
Those were milled in, so they do wear off in time. These will sit on the pavement. So they may be a little bit noisier, but again, they can come up and they will come up before the snowplows come up.
Wouldn't those be on 171 only?
They'd
though?
be on
They wouldn't be on
171.
They wouldn't be on Route 28.
They'd be here.
Correct, on 171. So it's not a case that you're going to be having thousands of vehicles a day hitting. It would only be the 171 traffic.
It could be worse.
I was gonna say, 171's pretty busy.
171 is amazing.
Yeah, there are a lot of people without, granite and all that. A lot of people use that road.
And they do not drive the recommended speed limit. Nobody goes down to 40 either.
No. What is the projected foot candles of light? If you're talking about putting a light, if you do the roundabout at every, are they gonna be aimed down or are they gonna be aimed up and we're gonna have?
They aim down. The practice is to use what's called a full cutoff, so it shines down. I don't know foot candles, that's way beyond my expertise. I do lanes and shoulders and things on the ground. But yes, we do try to be sensitive for light pollution, so lights aim down.
I'm concerned about, and I've always heard, I wouldn't be a fan of rumble strips being put transverse on 171 because I can hear it echoing down Old Route 28. It's bad enough that on 28 we're hearing them.
That is something we can hold off on. Again, it's a temporary installation, so it's something that we can very easily apply and remove. So if there at any point is a groundswell of support for that option, we could do it pretty easily. And then take it out when people don't like it. Yes, sir.
I agree with them on the rumble strips. Let's make that a last resort thing. But I had another comment. You had mentioned an intersection that I've been curious about. This one in Effingham, it's Route 153 and Route 25. A few years ago, though that's a bad intersection, has a lot of accidents there too. They had changed the stoplights, so they had little strobe lights in them, the red lights of the stoplight, of the stoplight. And those have been taken out soon after. And I heard some suggestion that that's a legal issue, that you're not allowed to do that. I wondered what your take on that.
We are no longer allowed to put strobes into our flashing red lights because apparently they trigger seizures in some people. So across the country, those are no longer allowed. That's my understanding.
So you can have regular blinking lights, but
Yeah,
not
it's
strobe
the
lights.
pattern of the brightness or the color. It was triggering epileptic seizures.
It's the flash.
I thought that was a good idea. It caught your attention. It's like, oh
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right.
I
And
gotta
that's
stop
why
here.
a lot of communities and states tried it. Yes, ma'am.
Regarding, I live in Effingham, thank you, whoever was behind making that project happen. We have seen a lot of fatal accidents, obviously, through the years in that area, and I think it made a big difference in that people were just blowing right through across Route 25. I guess there's no way to really tell with this intersection if people are stopping and then going, or just blowing through. I get the feeling they're stopping and they're not looking twice.
It's difficult to know. I suspect in the fatal crash, they didn't stop, because the vehicle they were struck by was coming from Wolfboro, so they would have seen them very clearly if they had stopped. That's just what I'm guessing from the pattern of the crash, but I don't know that. Yes, sir.
I live right there on that corner, and I knew the gentleman that was driving and on that fatal crash. He was familiar, very familiar with that intersection. He had been to my home, and he was moving to Wolfboro, and so he knew that intersection. Yet, my thought is, because of people coming to that area, not knowing that intersection, and the disadvantage they would be at, because of somebody knowing it still got in that fatal accident.
Right.
I think the roundabout is the best possibility for life saving.
Yes, sir.
So where do we go from here? Does that mean we choose tonight, that happens, or?
I'd love to hear, I've heard most of your opinions. It seems to be more in favor of the roundabout versus the signal. I would really love to get a letter from the selectmen if they're willing to stand behind one of the options. That would be very beneficial. And then we'll look at both of these and the input that we received and take the next step. And we'll communicate with the selectmen as we have.
And I'm only one, obviously.
Right.
The other two are not here, so I'll bring it up next Monday night.
Yes, ma'am.
The traffic lights on the circle, they be state operated? State
Yes.
pay for them?
Yes, these are both state highways, so.
Will they
it's
be
the state
solar?
responsibility, correct?
Will they be solar?
Will they be solar? Yes. You can solar.
Are we talking about luminaires?
Yes.
I doubt that they'll be solar, but
Street lights?
I couldn't guarantee that. They're probably LED, but probably not solar.
LED.
Because the excessive cost, I'm not sure, but the LED is low wattage anyway.
Because Ossipee Corner pays for certain lights.
We do.
Yeah. Yeah, we're Ossipee Corner Light and Power Precinct.
Well, true.
Right. I think in this case, because the state highway is on all four lanes, it's up to us.
The state, I want to make sure who's responsible.
Yes, sir.
So the key decision for the selectmen next Monday night is to choose the option, because I get the sentiment we're moving towards something here in the next year or two. The question will be there's some other decisions that have to be made in the interim, which is there an interim safety plan leading up to the bigger alternatives? Is that something that you've thought out?
Yes, right. I went through the list of short-term improvements. I guess tonight we've chosen not to go ahead with the rumble strips, and so all the short-term improvements have been done. The medium-term improvements included the speed study. We've determined that we really can't justify lowering the speed limit because there really wouldn't be any benefit to it. We also do plan this year to install a warning sign near the top of the hill here with flashing beacons on it. So that's the only remaining intermediate term you could call improvement.
So that's a decision the selectmen have to make Monday night, is also with moving forward with whatever alternative, but looking at what the interim safety plan is going to be, because you're talking about 2020 for one of these projects, and you're talking maybe 2019, 2018 for another one. And who knows what the traffic volume is going to increase in the next year or two, because the economy is improving, there is more traffic on our roads, so that interim safety piece is going to be very critical.
Yes, and my son. In the interim, too.
I wrote down
Don't forget the
your son.
son.
I got your son.
And listen, and I, as far as even the rumble strips, I don't want anybody to think that I am dispassionate to anybody that has to live near them. However, if that is a necessary piece of the safety plan until the intersection can be fixed, I'm not suggesting they should stay there forever. With all due respect, we have a serious history of not only not only serious injuries, but fatalities in that intersection. And if the rumble strips are necessary in the interim, then I think that the department ought to continue to look at that. But I agree wholeheartedly that we need to do everything we can to try to mitigate as best we can until one of the projects can actually be completed. And if it's gonna be 3 years, Adam, how many accidents is that in that intersection historically? A dozen? 15?
12, 15.
More serious crashes that will occur in that intersection before either one of those are done. Out of the 15, statistically, somebody's gonna die in that intersection before that gets built. And I think anything that we need to do to mitigate those hazards as best we can needs to be done until that can be put in.
Regarding the rumble strips, do you envision them only to the east or east and west?
The only one that I know of that I think, and I'm one person, I do have a little bit of history here, is on the Courthouse Square side on 171. Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember a lot of the accidents occurring with somebody coming from the county home side down through. It's that person who's not from here. You know, listen, I remember 20 years ago, a double fatal in that intersection, and it was a pair of old folks headed to the veterinary. They didn't know the intersection was there, and they never touched a brake. So I only think it's on the courthouse side of the intersection.
The blinking sign that you're going to put on the knoll, what does that say?
Probably entering traffic. I don't know for certain what that will say. It's most likely going to be yellow sign with black text on it, which is a standard warning sign.
Would it be feasible to put 3 more on each side to let them know that there's an intersection there? If that's the problem. As a temporary one.
Yeah, as I said at the outset, the rest of the permanent signs are adequate for what we would typically seek to have at an intersection. In discussions with the town, with others leading up to tonight, the discussion has really centered on, it's really beneficial to alert this traffic the presence of the intersection. And that's really the focus of that sign. Yes, ma'am.
I've seen in other dangerous intersections like that, where they have, before you come to the intersection, a little bit further back, maybe where the rumble strip would be, a sign that says dangerous, you know, caution, dangerous intersection ahead. How about something like that? Have you seen that?
I think it serves the same purpose as the warning sign we're proposing. In the words of our traffic engineer, who has oversight of all the signs in the state, saying dangerous intersection really doesn't tell you what's the problem. What does the driver need to be alert for?
Well, we're seeing where it says four-way intersection ahead, caution, you know.
Yeah.
There's tons of them out there.
It's difficult to come up with just the right sign that
Right.
people will understand
Yeah.
immediately and react to appropriately.
Right, yeah.
I think the difference between signage and rumble strips is you have a lot of really distracted drivers coming out of the county facility. I mean, there's jurors, there's people coming from their grandparents or whatever at the county home. There's just a lot of distracted drivers, and something needs to rattle them, take their attention. I mean, you heard one guy talk about somebody who was very familiar with the intersection, yet they went blowing on through. I mean, I think there's a lot of distraction from people coming from the county complex. So I think, as you say, you can fill in those rumble strips pretty easily.
These actually, again, these are temporary installations, so they're essentially a tape you put down across the lanes.
Yeah.
You just take them off when you're done.
Mike, thank you. Can you talk about the timeline a little bit more on the roundabout, because I think that's where everybody wants to go with this. Project start, project completion.
Because of the process we need to follow to be able to purchase the property rights, I anticipate the earliest that we could deliver the roundabout would be 2020, because the process to have the public hearing and then to develop plans and then to purchase the property takes a good 1.5 to 2 years right there, plus design time. So 2020 for construction.
For construction or construction completion?
Well, it'll be done in one season.
So 3-month project, 6-month project?
Yeah, beginning in April or May and ending before the end of the construction season, September, October.
Thank you.
I was going to support Selectman Morgan until he brought up the rumble strips again. What would it take to get that sign approved that he's talked about? It seems to me that could be done tomorrow. and put it, a bigger sign, more visible.
Seems that way.
Says, check your blinker.
Like I said, I will ask again and see what the possibilities are.
It is a little different what I'm asking this time, though, seriously, is that just it not be taken down. I'm not asking, and I understand that you folks have rules that we don't. I'm simply asking, if a sign appears down there, will somebody not take it down? All I'm asking.
I won't take it down.
In the meantime, you can put one where that one is.
So something needs to be done here, I'm up with the selectmen. It sounds like something needs to be done in Concord too, to make sure that the sign won't get taken down. So what is that? What needs to happen for that sign to go up is my question.
We will discuss it with the state traffic engineer and we'll resolve that issue.
Great,
While
thanks.
they're discussing it, there'll be a sign up. I hope it doesn't get taken down.
We can make lots of signs and we can put a new one up every week. if we-
Other than they're expensive, I just don't want them to keep stealing them.
If there are no other questions, I will stay, Trent will stay as long as you have any comments. You can approach the plans and check out the details. And we're here as long as you are. So thank you very much.
Just